So for this episode of Wishful Thinking, we are going to be talking about Graeme Bass's novel Truck Dogs, which, as you can probably tell, is a children's book. Not typically the kind of thing that I read, probably not typically the kind of thing that I'll be talking about here, but I wanted to start with this one because it was the first real book, or the first chapter book, I guess, that I tried to read to my 4-year-old, my kid. And I say tried to read because, as many of y'all know, parenting is basically one long, protracted exercise in humbling oneself. And this was one of my many failures. And because wishful thinking is not just about books, it's also about drinking. And because this is an Australian novel, I have paired it with this Foster's beer, which apparently is Australian for Budweiser. Also a beer for people who like really big cans. This is not so much a tall boy as it is a fat boy. So girth over length. Not sure what that says about Foster's drinkers, but it is what it is. All right, so a little bit of background here. I have a 4-year-old, and he's kind of into books, or maybe I force him to be into books because, you know, we project our desires onto our kids until they're old enough to tell us to fuck off, basically. So we read a lot of books, and we read stuff like this. This is The Entertainer. This is a book about a birthday party where a bear shows up, and the parents and the partygoers all assume that it is a guy in a bear suit who has come to be the entertainment at the party. I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but turns out it's a real bear, and hilarity ensues. Probably his favorite book at the moment. We got the Pokey Little Puppy. We got a stone cold classic here, Dr. Seuss, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. We also have, what's probably my favorite, this is The Happy Man and His Dump Truck, which once you get past the anthropomorphic, I was drinking when I filmed this, forgive me if I slur my words. Once you get past the talking animals, this is about a man who finds comfort and peace in the mundane, everyday tasks in front of him, much like the characters at the end of Voltaire's Candide find in their garden. So pretty heady stuff there for a children's book. But back to Truck Dogs. So Truck Dogs, I'll crib from the blurb here. Truck Dogs takes place in a far-off desert world where evolution has taken an unexpected turn. So essentially this unexpected term is that the dominant life form on this planet, or in the universe, the world of Truck Dogs, are truck dogs. And these are creatures which have the chassis and the body of a car or a truck in most cases, and then sort of this monstrous head of a dog. So a little bit how this came to pass with how I came to read Truck Dogs. I can hear my stepdaughter cackling in the background there. We're in a coffee shop, right? And my kid, he picks up the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is this hugely successful young adult series done with, like, you know, sort of crudely drawn line drawings, more or less like a young adult graphic novel, if you will. And we read a little bit of it there in the coffee shop, and he seems to be kind of into it. And I think, wow, you know, there's something to be said for the value of a long, sustained narrative, right? So we go to the library, and I'm going to pick out a new book. So I pick out a couple that I want to read to him. One of them's The Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm going to let him choose. One of them's The Diary of a Wimpy Kid. One of them is Beverly Cleary's novel, The Mouse and the Motorcycle, which was my book jam when I was a kid. And so I'm like, oh, you know, hey, look, you know, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, we read this in the coffee shop. You'll like this. It'll be a great night-night book. Or, oh, wow, you know, The Mouse and the Motorcycle. This This is a great book. You'll love this one. And he goes over to the shelf and he picks this up and he says, no, I want this one. What's this one called? And I say, Truck Dogs. And Wild Horses could not have dragged him away from this, because as he kept pointing out, it's a truck and a dog. So, Truck Dogs. Truck Dogs is essentially a Western. Instead of cowboys and outlaws and badly drawn racist stereotype Indians, we have truck dogs. And our protagonist, his name is Sparky. He's a good kid. He lives in this desert outback town of Hubcap. Everything's sort of truck and car themed in this novel, as you might expect. So Sparky is, he's a good kid, but he's kind of bored. And he's kind of fascinated with the mongrel pack, which is this pack of mongrels, this pack of strays, who are also young truck dogs. They don't have parents. They're just sort of ne'er-do-wells wandering around Hubcap, sort of getting in trouble and whatnot. And Sparky kind of falls in with them for a brief moment. And he's fascinated by them, and they get into a little bit of trouble. They end up getting run out of town by the townsfolk, including Sparky's mom, who happens to be the mayor of Hubcap. So they get run out of town, and there's this sort of older, wiser truck dog. His name is Rex. Again, very imaginative name for a dog. Rex is a tractor truck dog, so he's a tractor dog, I guess, if you will. So Rex goes out into the outback to find this mongrel pack, who he kind of identifies with, and he wants to kind of help them out. So when Rex is gone to find the mongrel pack, this other gang of strays moves into town, and they are bad news. They are the Rottweilers, if you will. And they are led by Mr. Big, who I voiced like this as I was reading to him. Well, I'm just going to hike my leg. I'm just going to hike my tire all over Hubcap. So Rex, Mr. Big is this Chihuahua / I don't know, some kind of fucking truck. A little tiny guy named Mr. Big. So he leaves the Rottweiler gang. They come into town. They steal all the gasoline, which is called petrol in this novel because it's Australian. They steal all the gasoline. They tie the people up, and basically one thing leads to another. Sparky escapes town. He goes to try to find Rex, who's out in the outback, saving the mongrel pack from desert dogs, which are basically dingo / Jeep creatures running around out in some kind of fucking Mad Max thing out in the outback. So Sparky tracks them down, tells them what's going on in Hubcap, and he brings Rex and the mongrel pack back into town. Turns out that Rex and the mongrel pack, with Sparky's help, save the people of Hubcap, run the Rottweiler gang out of town, and everything ends up kind of hunky-dory. So there basically is the plot of the novel. Again, more or less a Western. Lots of Western tropes here, with just characters being played by truck dogs. What's memorable about this thing to me is not so much the book itself as it is the experience of reading it to my kid. I thought that he was ready for a longer, sustained narrative, but I guess it turns out that what he was most interested in The Diary of a Wimpy Kid was not the story itself, but in the pictures. Because reading this thing to him at night was, as I said earlier, an exercise in humility. I would read it and I would try to do voices and all that, and he just kind of wasn't into it. He's 4 years old, so he would squirm around, and you couldn't really pay attention to it. And you can't really impose your will on a 4-year-old the way that those of y'all who don't have 4-year-olds probably don't understand. It's just not a thing that you can do. So I ended up kind of more or less giving up reading it to him about halfway through. I actually ended up finishing the book. I'm not one of those people who has to finish every book. I mean, there's a long list of books that I have started and not finished. If I'm not interested in it, if it's just, if it's not very good, or if it's just not the right book for the time, I will, I'll stop on page 152 halfway through and never look back. But something about this novel, I don't know exactly why, it kind of compelled me to go ahead and finish it. So I did, actually finished it, even though I was no longer reading it to my kid. The other thing that's memorable about this book to me is that it kind of underscores what I've always kind of known about myself, and that is that I think way too fucking much. And I overthink everything. Because when I was reading this book, which is complete with, some illustrative plates like this one, little, like, basically what amounts to trading card analyses of each one of the truck dogs with, bio facts about them and whatnot. What I kept thinking about was, how did this evolve? Is a truck dog made? Do you engineer one? Are they born? Is there a litter of truck dogs? Let's say mommy truck dog and daddy truck dog love each other very much, and they drink a bottle of wine and they end up, I guess, doing it doggy style. And then there's a litter born, and let's say mommy is a, Cocker Spaniel / Jeep, and daddy is a Great Dane / I don't know, cement mixer. What kind of comes out? Is there, do half of them come out as cement mixers, the other half come out as Jeeps? What's going on here? So I couldn't stop thinking about that. And again, it just kind of underscored for me how sometimes I think you can just think way too fucking much in life. So I'll sum this one up by saying I'll give it, I guess, 2 out of 5 doggy treats. Pretty interesting little concept once you get past the hideous shock of seeing your first truck dog. Not a bad little novel. Very straightforward, very conventional narrative, and we like those things. Something about narrative structure is very comforting, and that's what I was trying to impart to my 4-year-old. I guess he's not quite ready for that yet. So we're going to go back to the happy little man and his dump truck. So until next time, keep reading, keep drinking, because where would we be without wishful thinking?